y'all, it's Alan. Well met. Um, Today is day 27 of the community Vlogmas 2019. I always add the "the" in there, and I don't necessarily mean to, but it is what it is. Today's question is, what do you think happens once we die? So this is kind of the basis of my personal ancestral work. What happens once we die? So I'm going to start with 4 foundational ideas that I believe are part and parcel of ancestor work, that I believe are part and parcel of working with the dead in any way, shape, or form. These 4 principles come from a book by Dr. Daniel Four. The book is called Ancestral Medicine: Rituals for Personal and Family Healing, and his last name is Four, F-O-O-R. And it's a really good book, at least what I've read of it. So anyways, these 4 principles are pretty much universal, in my opinion. So the first one is that consciousness continues after death in some way, shape, or form. In my own personal belief system, I believe that humans have 3 souls, and each of those 3 souls does a different thing after death. One of them continues on as consciousness, and I believe that that becomes part of the ancestors. Your other 2 souls do different things, but I'm not going to go into all of that right now, because it's not necessary for this conversation. The second principle is that not all of the dead are equally well. I have categories of the dead. The most recent dead, I believe, can become hungry dead, meaning they're superbly maleficent and they feed on anything they can come across. I believe that the most recent dead can also be what we call ghosts, which are not completely horrific like the hungry dead, but they're not healed like the ancestors. They're not well. They're okay to have around, but probably not somebody you'd want around your kids. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're not horrible, but they're not great either. And then there are the bright ones, which I would consider ancestors proper, which are well-healed, well-adjusted. They know they're dead. They are so well-healed in the afterlife that they're called ancestors, and they pass on their blessings and their gifts to their progeny. Those would be what I referred to in the prayer that I mentioned last video: guardians, guides, and ancestors. The ancestors would be the ones that I particularly call upon, the bright ones, the well-healed ones. I believe also principle 3 is that the living and the dead can communicate. I believe that there are people who may be gifted as mediums who can communicate with the dead on behalf of others. However, I also believe, especially when it comes to ancestral work, that we can communicate with the dead in our own blood and bone lines without any assistance whatsoever. It's just a matter of focus. That's how I see that. I believe that the living and the dead can strongly affect one another. The hungry dead can feed off you. Ghosts can feed off you, but the ghosts can also futz around in your life. The hungry dead basically futz around in your life just by draining all of your energy. And then the ancestors pass on their blessings and their gifts to you as their progeny, as their descendant. They have a vested interest in your life, in your experience, in your journey on this planet. So that's how I see life after death for the human. In addition, as I mentioned in another video, I believe specifically in a form of Irish mythology wherein humans are direct descendants of the bloodline of the gods. The gods are our ancestors in many ways. And I don't believe that makes anyone more special than anyone else. I'm just saying I believe that humans are gods in that sense. And I believe that those would also be called bright ones because they are part of the well-heeled ancestors. Yes, my path is not simple by any means. It can be quite confusing. But that is how I see the things happening after death. I believe that, however, I will say this. I believe that the dead are not always well. I believe that there are plenty of dead who are not well, especially now in this modern age, because of the fact that humanity has moved away from the ritualizing of death. And I'm not talking about getting psychological closure. Yeah, that's great. Funerals help with that. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about we have gotten away from the profound interaction with death that our literal blood and bone ancestors once had. When the unwell enter into the afterlife, they are still unwell until such a time as they heal. And once they are healed, they move up the spectrum. They move from most recent dead to ancestors. They move from hungry dead to ghosts to ancestors, and then to bright ones. Like bright ones are the far end of the spectrum, which are already fully healed. Ancestors are healed and willing to bless and gift. Ghosts are meh, and hungry dead are get the fuck away from me now. So, there's the spectrum there. And that spectrum, on that spectrum, I believe that the dead can interact with us in ways that we don't necessarily want in our lives. And because of that, and that's because of, in my opinion, most of the dead today are not healed. They're not well because humanity has gotten away from the ritualized ability to assist them in their progression forward. I believe that prayer and offerings and ritual and the ritualization of death and mourning, I believe that all of those things together help the unwell dead move into being well dead. I believe that you can pray enough and do enough ritual and do enough work on your part to assist the unwell dead become well and become ancestors and then become bright ones. So peace Blessed be, and namaste.